Now, we had Pauline Hanson on the program last night. She told us about a motion for an inquiry into experimental child gender reassignment treatments, puberty blockers, surgeries. Well, today the motion was defeated, and while no one is surprised that Labor and the Greens voted against it, it's worth noting, Tina, that several Liberal senators voted against this most necessary measure, including Coalition Senate Leader Simon Birmingham. We've got Senator Jane Hume, Andrew Bragg, Dean Smith. How can they justify this? How can they justify not having an inquiry when we've seen what's happened in the UK, we've seen what's happened in Scandinavia, we've seen what's happened in the US, and we are ignoring that international experience and perhaps inflicting terrible treatments on vulnerable kids, and some of these treatments are irreversible.
Oh, it's shocking. It's child abuse. And I mean, they're the usual subjects, except for Dean Smith. That one surprises me. But Simon Birmingham, Andrew Bragg, Bridget Archer, that entire list. I mean, there's no loyalty to the leader, no loyalty to the party.
Maria Kovacic, I forgot her.
Oh, yes.
Maria, let's not forget her. She was the other one.
She was the latest one that was left the state presidency of New South Wales to go put into the Senate. But it's just disgraceful, and most of all, it's disappointing the base of the party. They're upsetting the party base. So good luck with their pre-selections. These guys are being watched closely, especially in New South Wales, where we can do something about it.
Nick, Australia's just blindly following this dangerous affirmation model. We're ignoring the research that's coming from Scandinavia and the UK. And I wonder, if there are going to be legal consequences, but politically, what do you make of these small L Liberals siding with Labor and the Greens?
Well, I think these distinguished and honoured members of the Parliament and the Senate are wrong in this case. I mean, this is clearly experimental a process. It's only been in action for the last 5 or 6 years. We haven't begun to see the consequences of this, which will be huge. I think in probably in 30 years' time, Four Corners will be doing a documentary on the terrible things that happened 30 years ago over this. At the time they're all for it, but I think this is going to sit with like the emptying out the mental health hospitals, all those measures which seemed so far-sighted back in the 1970s and 80s now are seen to be absolutely terrible and had terrible consequences.
Nick, we don't have to wait that long. There's evidence of it now, of young people trying to reverse this and taking legal action over what was done to them.
That's right, but it'll be a long time before, conventional opinion, which is what the ABC presents, actually comes round to that way of thinking. They take a long time.
Well, see, I disagree, Nick. I disagree because that conventional opinion is already turned in other countries that we should be taking note of, including the UK, including Scandinavian countries, which were at the forefront of some of this treatment, and they're finding what's happening. And in the US, there are all sorts of legal actions occurring because these young, confused teenagers, in some instance, who've had irreversible treatments, double mastectomies sometimes being left sterile, and they're now detransitioning, going back to their original gender, but they cannot undo the damage that's been done to their bodies. It's just tragic. I've spoken to some of those poor people, and I just think we've got to wake up and look at what's happening. Just a couple of these names surprised me. Senator Jane Hume, I thought she was supposed to be sensible. Anyway, let's move on to